If looking for a new job or a position, especially at mid-career or the halftime of life, where do you begin? And with the growth of AI and many businesses now downscaling, how do we set ourselves apart? Well, our guest today, Josef Stetter, he brings some solid ideas and some principles, and he calls himself the resume whisperer. And he understands what it's like having changed careers himself 9 times. So you will gain some insights in preparing well, on maximizing your transferable skills, and even maybe discover some trends in hiring. So stay tuned. This podcast is brought to you by DJ Works Media and HalftimeSuccess.com, offering resources and insights for those at mid-career or the halftime of life. Explore our diverse categories, including courses, coaching, health, music, software, and travel. We're here to help you make this stage of life your best ever. So get our new articles, downloads, and podcasts by signing up for weekly updates at goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Well, hello. I'm so happy to have the resume whisperer here. Thank you so much for being with us, Josef. We've had a little previous conversation. I've already learned so much from you, and I'm so excited for you to share with our audience some of these amazing things that you work with, and you've got some great stories and great tidbits. And so I like my guests to share their bio and everything about them instead of me doing these long bios. So can you share your background? Because I've given a tiny bit on our introduction, but now share a little bit more with us.
Awesome. First of all, Deborah, thank you for having me, and it's an honor and a pleasure. So I'll start with the fact that I didn't know what I want to do when I grew up. So I, switched careers 9 times and jobs 18 times because I got bored or achieved a certain level, and it was like, okay, there's nothing more for me to achieve. What's next? And moved on. And I started my career to please my parents because I grew up where, getting an education, get a good job was kind of the mindset. Along the ways of my career exploration, I started also doing self-development. And for example, I did the Tony Robbins Walk of Fire. And, he spent 7 hours preparing you to walk over 40 feet of burning coals. Mm. And after I had that experience, I'm like, why is nobody teaching some of these concepts for job finding? Wow. And so I started, one of the jobs that I had, I was a director of admissions for a company that owns 75 private colleges across Canada. And I noticed that their career services was just so generic and bland and kind of cookie cutter, regurgitated from whatever every government unemployment office gives you. And I was like, this is horrible. So I kind of created a manual here's how you do this better. My VP got intimidated that I could think for myself and kind of threw me under the bus and kind of said, thank you, we don't need you anymore. And so I published the book. There was 2 versions. One's called Canada, Congratulations is Hard. One's called USA, Congratulations is Hard, which is pretty much every resource you can imagine to find a job, every employment agency, every job board, questions and the interview. And then I decided I want to kind of give back. So I started offering free workshops and seminars on how to find a job correctly. And in the process, I've written 12 books, and I've had the honor and the pleasure of writing or helping 12,000 people land their dream job in as little as 2 days. And I also opened I got into recruiting in my first year as a recruiter. I generated my employer $760,000. My supervisor, who had been there for 11 years, generated $140,000. To thank me for generating $750,000, the owner gave me cheese and crackers. And when I looked at her and went, "What is this?" She was like, "Well, the cheese is from a grocery store called Pusateri's, which is like a very high end, they massage the cow for a month kind of grocery store." And I'm like, do I look like I'm 65 years old that I need cheese that was massaged for there? Sadly, the crackers were from the dollar store.
Oh dear.
And I'm like, if this is how you thank me, I'm going to open my own recruiting firm. And I've been a generalist in recruiting for nearly 20 years. I've worked with small to global companies like Deloitte and Touche, Apotex Pharmaceuticals, Tata
Mhm.
Consulting Services. And so I've learned the ins and outs of, what makes
Yes.
companies hire you,
Mhm.
because we're in a situation right now where half of HR is terrified of AI and is using old
Yes.
applicant tracking systems,
Mhm.
and the other half has jumped on the bandwagon of AI. But the problem is that no one's defined how the AI is scoring a resume. So in one platform, if the job description says you need or let's say you need 10 years of experience plus, and you have 8, you get partial points. If they need, let's say, 25 technical words and you have 20, you get partial points. Whereas, and if you take that same resume and you put it into one of the other AI resume scanners, if you don't have the 10 years of experience, you get no points, or you don't have the full technical words, you don't get points. And so this has become kind of a wild, wild west because AI is still in infancy and we haven't taught it how
Mm.
to understand what it is that we consider to be a good candidate and what
Wow.
is a good match. And so there's a lot of people that are kind of in this abyss of like, I'm sending resumes and I'm sending resumes, I'm not getting any responses. And so
Yes.
I
Mm.
became the resume whisperer because there's plenty of career coaches, there's plenty of career gurus, there's plenty of resume writers, and I was like, resume whisperer, because
I love
if
it.
I can get 30 people hired in as little as 2 days, I must be doing something right. And it's a little bit distinct, and it's a great conversation starter.
It really is. I mean, I've heard of a horse whisperer, a dog whisperer. One of my sons calls me a dog whisperer. I don't really believe that, but it's because they're all of the dogs come and sit in my lap. But it's very, very clever. You have a huge resume and you've just expounded on some of the things of your results. We're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about AI because I think that's very, very important. People are afraid of it. They don't understand it. And the boundaries that you can put around that. Now you've got these little clues on this interview process and some of the things we need to watch out for. And can you give us, the type of resumes and some of the just the warning signs that people have on their resumes? What do they put in their resumes that's an immediate like you shouldn't do?
So
You have
my
some clues
five
there.
car so my five cardinal sins for a resume. Number one, stop using Times New Roman, Arial, or Calibri as your font because those are the default fonts. If you remember the movie Legally Blonde,
Mm,
when Reese Witherspoon or Elle Woods applies to Harvard,
yes.
uh, she sends a pink scented resume, and they look at it and go, "It's pink and
I
it's
loved
scented,"
it.
but they remembered it,
Yes.
right? And so if you're using the same fonts, the second mistake is that they use the, typical black circles, squares, or hyphens as
Mhm.
their bullet points, right? If you go to insert bullet in
Mm,
Microsoft Word, there's, a diamond, a check mark,
yes.
an arrow,
Mhm.
something where it doesn't have to be very significant. Wow, but it's subtle and people notice it.
Yes.
Understand that employers today are spending between 5 and 30 seconds reading your resume, which means they
Wow.
look at the top third to the top half of
Mm,
your resume.
mhm.
Uh, the third mistake is that most people at the top of their resume write career history or
Mhm.
skills, and they fill it with fluff like I'm
Mm,
hardworking, dedicated, committed team player with excellent communication skills. In 20 years of recruiting, I've met very few people that say, listen, I'm lazy. I'll show up late. None of my work will be any good. And I really hate people. Please hire me. The
mhm.
only time that works is if you're related to somebody in the company or you're having an affair with them, right?
Oh.
Yeah, because then they don't care what you say. It's kind of default that you're getting the job.
Mm-mm.
Uh, the fourth mistake, and this is where it's more uh, critical today than it ever was before.
Mhm.
Because right now in North America, you have 65 million people that are unemployed, 50 million people that are severely unemployed, meaning have a university or college degree but work at McDonald's, and then another 40 million or so that are going through some sort of educational retraining. We have a target market of 150 million people that need help.
Wow.
And so if you've been hit by hard times where you lost your job as an engineer
Mm,
and you're working at Dunkin' Donuts right now, and
mhm.
that's the first thing on your resume, a lot of
Mm,
engineering firms will go, oh, you weren't that good as an engineer because
mm.
you're kind of desperate and you're getting hired as an at Dunkin' Donut or you're doing Uber driving.
Mhm.
Now,
Wow.
don't get me wrong, I appreciate survival and taking care of your family
Right.
tremendous.
Right.
But in terms of your job search, if that's the first thing I'm seeing on your resume and I'm spending 8 seconds reading your resume, I read Dunkin' Donuts. I'm not really reading engineer for the
Yes.
rest of the resume. So
Mhm.
chronological or functional resumes to me are ineffective.
Mhm.
And then the
Mm.
biggest mistake of all is that people list their duties and responsibilities. They don't
Mm.
actually highlight how great they are and what they've produced on the job. So I love to give these two examples. So if you apply to be a receptionist somewhere and you say, I know how to answer the phone, I hope a
Mm.
company looks at you in shock and goes, really? A receptionist that knows how to answer the phone? We did not know that. Because unless you live in an igloo, a cave, or practice the faith of Mennonite, my 2.5-year-old son can press the green button and go, hello, right? And it's very cute, right? But if you've worked as a receptionist or you study to be a receptionist and you say to
Mhm.
me, I know how to answer 60 calls a day with 12 different lines, I can
Mm.
measure 60 calls with 12 different lines. I cannot measure,
Mm.
I know how to answer the phone. Now, if I
Yes.
use an example from my own career, I can say to you, Deborah, I'm an excellent salesperson. I know how to do B2B, B2C, account
Mhm.
management, relationship building, lead generation. I've worked in retail. I've done door to door sales. I've done car sales. I've worked in private education. I've worked in
Mhm.
recruiting. I know how to do sales. Now,
Mm.
just because I said a lot of words, which are very important for the scoring of algorithms in job boards like Indeed, Career
Yes.
Builder, Monster, uh, but and LinkedIn, just
Mhm.
because I've given you a lot of terminology doesn't mean I'm any good at sales.
Yes.
But if
Uh,
I give you a real example, I worked for a private college where I was asked, where before I came in, they sold $530,000 worth of courses for the
mm.
year. In 1 month, I generated for them $860,000.
Wow.
Now, I usually get wow, and then I get how. And as long as I can explain the how,
Mhm.
I've proven to you that I know how to sell.
Mm. Yes.
The problem is that most people kind of go, "Oh, I love my job. I'm really hardworking. I'm a team player.
Mhm.
I know how to do data science."
Mhm.
Okay, but can you tell me what models have you created? What
Mhm.
simulations have you run? What was the impact? What was the
Mhm.
results? What was the decisions that were made because of what you did on the job? If you
Mm.
can't, you're not demonstrating to me your value. You're not demonstrating to
Mm.
me why you are better than the other people that are applying for the job.
Mm.
And this is where most people fail is because they have never been taught to look at themselves and say, wow, I did this.
Mm.
And, there's a
Yes.
mindset where you might think something is small and insignificant. That could be the most important thing to the company that's interviewing you. But if you've decided to dismiss whatever accomplishments you've had,
Mhm.
you're setting yourself up for failure because no one
Yes.
sees your value.
Wow. I just I'm just, fascinated with those. I mean, you've got those just like this because you've helped so many people, and it really helps us affirm your experience, and you're not only in sales, but just your experience in, being able to help people through their resumes. And in my background, because I've,
Yeah,
lifetime
1 second, sorry.
entrepreneur. Yes, go ahead,
I
it's
have
okay.
to re-record, so I have to go a little bit longer. Okay. Sorry, wife's just checking with
Yeah.
the kids what's going on. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. For those listeners, we had a little bit of a technical issue, so we've had to come back to it, which we always have. But that's part of my resume. How do you get through technical stuff? You just do. You just
Exactly.
do. So, but yeah, sharing kind of the different sort of resumes we have, and as a lifetime entrepreneur, but yet I've been in the educational field. So usually they ask for a little bit something different. They want to know every place you've worked and all of this. They're not always looking for sales and all of those things. So it feels a little different. But from our previous conversation, we had a lot of those principles apply across the board. And if we're writing a bio, okay, even if it's a brief bio, we want to know some of the main takeaways from what makes you unique because we are in a world of commoditization. It's a long word, commodities.
Yeah. So here's what I'm going to say. I'm working right now on my first TED Talk, and there is a little bit of when you present, oh, I help people avoid being depressed. It doesn't
Yes.
sound exciting. It doesn't
Mm-mm.
sound there. But if you go, I energize you to, live to your full potential,
Hmm.
it catches the attention. It grabs the attention. So
Yes.
even in the words that we use, there's always even in education, I've never met an educator that doesn't know how to plan their lesson,
Yeah.
right? So if you can kind of describe some interesting or creative lessons that you've done to
Mhm.
engage students, to engage learners, there is a level of that. Like, I mean,
Yes.
I've gone to, 3-day events, and I'm a big believer in self-development, where, a 2-minute conversation was the aha moment I needed. That was like, you know what? I just paid $10,000 for 2 minutes, but that 2 minutes
Mhm.
was what I needed to move to the next level. And
Right.
so there's a level where even in this world, as much as we love to hear the rags to riches, the reality
Mhm.
is that every successful entrepreneur has spent the 10,000 hours plus to
Yes.
kind of
Plus.
like I've invested
Plus.
30,000 hours to know
Hmm.
what everything there's to know about
Right.
job finding, with the exception of a few newer Google interview questions that have kind of
Yes.
I've had to learn them, or I'm learning them in the process. But you have to
Mm.
understand, it's a process from a perspective of who do I connect with? As much as right
Mm.
now, as I said earlier, there is 150, 160 million people that need help in North America alone in terms of
Yes.
finding a job or career that they're happy with. I'm realistic that I'm not going to help every single one of them. I'm not going to complain if I do,
Hmm.
because my legacy will live on for a very, very long time, and my bank account too. But there's a reality where I kind of go, look, my personal game is to help 1.8 million people. If there's people that want a female career coach,
Hmm.
or someone that is of their cultural or ethnic background, that speaks their language, that's had similar experiences, I
Hmm.
respect and admire that. I
Exactly.
stay in my lane. I know, like, I
Hmm.
help white collar professionals that are doing their office job type of
Hmm.
environment, even if it's a hybrid role, to
Yep.
kind of level up, where
Yep.
you haven't passed for promotions, you haven't gotten the raises, or you've gotten the minimum 2% raise, and kind of go, okay, here's how to show companies that you're worth more. And, there's a level where, how do you determine what you're worth? Again, it's a conversation where,
Hmm.
when you highlight, this is how good I am, these are the results I
Hmm.
produce, the price becomes less and less of an issue.
Yeah.
Because yes, there'll always be people cheaper. And when I have people go, oh, you charge $400 to write a resume, I can get someone to write a resume for $100. I go to them.
Yeah.
I know the results that you're going to get, right? Like, there's a reason they charge $100,
Mhm.
right? Or $29, or whatever it is, because there's a level where if they're charging $29, they're probably spewing you through ChatGPT without properly teaching ChatGPT
Mhm.
parameters of what
Mhm.
makes you unique, and
Mhm.
how to emphasize that you're better than the rest. And so this is where, again, technology such as AI is there to make things simpler, but it's not just open ChatGPT and just start using it without defining it, right?
Yes.
And so there's a level where you have to teach it how to start thinking, how to process, how to compare, how to analyze certain information, because this
Mhm.
is where we get into a lot of trouble, because
Yes.
we're just going, oh, ChatGPT will do it for us. And,
Yeah.
again, I've read resumes where I'm like, yeah, you copy and paste from ChatGPT. I know exactly where the prompt you gave it to, for
Yeah,
example.
that's a great, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that because it's really, really important to approach AI. When you were talking about, you you reap the rewards of what you hire. I mean, we just had to redo two of our bathrooms back to back because the showers were leaking. Well, they took a lot of shortcuts. That's why. They didn't, do all of the prep that they needed to do with the tar and the red wall and all of that. They just didn't. And so with the waterproofing, it wasn't done right. Well, it's the same thing when you hire somebody that doesn't have maybe the breadth of its experience or being able to approach AI, and some of those clues. And I think that's very, very important in our process of this, in setting ourselves apart. How are we different? And you are able to determine some of that. Let's give some clues on using AI because right now there's a lot of people maybe looking for work. They've been either downsized or maybe they've had a government job, and now they're finding, well, I need to find something different that to do. Some of the many businesses are now requiring workers to come back to the office. Oh no, I really like working remotely. Maybe I want to do my own thing, and I really help people live their best years ahead. The second half of life is just amazing. Of what you can accomplish, but there's a lot of things you need to put into place. So why don't you talk a little bit more about the AI tools and how that works? Because I use AI mainly in rewriting, but you always have to check it. Always, always have to check it.
Look, so here's what I'm going to say, and there's a few elements to this, and understand that AI is still in its infancy. I think
Yes.
that I have a list of about 5,000 plus AI platforms right now. Some of them I'll probably never use because my mind is not, let's say, a graphic designer or a video editor or
Mhm.
anything like that. So, I mean, it's good that I know what they can do, but
Right.
I, one of my clients once said this, and I've kind of became a personal mantra. As a CEO of a company, I should never be the smartest man in the room, because if I'm the smartest man in the room, I'm in the wrong room. And so there's a level where you have to understand that I respect that, as we said, people have their experts. When
Yes.
my garage is broken, I call a guy, he fixes it. I don't care if it takes him 10 minutes, whatever he
Right.
charges me. I'm like, you were educated,
Done.
you did in 10 minutes. I don't care that it took you 10
Right.
minutes. You earned the right to say you're that good. And
Mhm.
so I honor your expertise. Now, in terms of AI, and I'll kind of use this simple example, and I'll credit my CTO, Dr. Russell Thomas,
Mhm.
um, on this. He said, if you open three chats in ChatGPT, the first you say to your chat, you're Socrates, and everything that you do is based on the highest morals and ethics standards that exist. Second one, you're Machiavelli, and all you care about is the end result that you produce. And the third one, which is the most dangerous, you don't put any parameters because then you're letting ChatGPT or Copilot AI or any of the other
Yes.
AI platforms dictate and choose what data they give you.
Mhm.
Now, then go to your chats and say, okay, you've been tasked with downsizing 20% of your workforce. How would you do it?
Mhm.
Socrates will try to come up with a solution that will cause the least amount of pain and impact.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
Socrates will go, okay, you know what? You have 10% of your staff that is 75 plus years old. Maybe package them out because they've had a long, illustrious career at this stage of kind of, life and so forth.
Mhm.
Then chat will go, you know what, based on certain data, or Socrates will go, you have, let's say, 10, 15% of your workforce that is single, young, early 20s kind of thing. So because they don't have family responsibilities, because they don't have, you know, major obligations, and again, there is financial obligations, but there's ways of
Mhm.
setting parameters for it.
Right.
Maybe you can package them out and then you can kind of, and Socrates will try to find the most moral and ethical way of doing downsizing.
Yes.
Machiavelli, on the other hand, will go, here's how to lie about the numbers. Here's how to cheat. Go into the office, close your eyes, go, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired until you get to 20%. Um, and if you have no morals and ethics, even how to kill them in their sleep without getting caught, because all Machiavelli cares about is that you've downsized 20% of
Yeah.
your
End
workforce.
result. End result. Yes.
Now, the last one, which is and the reason I say it's the most dangerous, because if you don't put parameters, and this was a real case that happened about 4 or 5 months ago, there was a
Mhm.
company that was teaching people how to prevent becoming anorexic by teaching them healthy
Mhm.
habits.
Ooh.
And they did not control the parameters of ethics, morals, and the value of the data that's going into the system. And bad data came into the system that started
Mhm.
teaching people not only how to become anorexic,
Mhm.
but also how to kill themselves. And it's
Ooh.
actually went to court where people were like, your platform caused this person to die. And the platform collapsed from the inside. This is kind of what's happening with HR right now, where a lot of them have jumped on the bandwagon called AI, but they
Mhm.
haven't defined how they measure the quality of a candidate. So
Ah.
are they measuring it based
Mm.
on the number of technical terms? Are
Mm.
they measuring it based on number of designations? Are they measuring it on the years of experience? There is zero standard right now in the market. And
Mhm.
because AI is still learning, if you're writing a resume and you go to ChatGPT, say, write me a mechanical engineer resume,
Mhm. Mhm.
ChatGPT will give you, here is the standard based on the data that's in the internet,
Mhm.
mechanical engineers do. But just because it wrote standard doesn't mean it highlighted why you are a good engineer or why
Ah.
you deserve the job. It just
Mhm.
kind of went, here's the kind of generic formula that so far most, let's say, job boards use, most this, and this is what we think will score. Right. And if you go into one platform and let's say the platform, the job description says you need 10 years of experience, but you have 7, that platform will give you partial points. If the platform
Mm.
says you need these 25 technical words and you have 20 of them, the platform will give you partial points. You take that
Mm.
same resume and go to another platform, and if you don't have the 10 years of experience, you're completely dismissed. If you don't
Mm.
um, have all of the keywords, you're completely dismissed. And so what's happening is that people are very, very frustrated because
Mm.
they're not getting anywhere. So
Yeah.
I've been teaching for nearly 20 years.
Mm.
A few simple, you think people would know, but logical tricks.
Mhm.
Most of the big job boards like Indeed, Monster, Career Player, refresh their database between 11:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 2:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you posted your resume in October, for example, or we're now in February and you haven't touched it on Indeed, you're probably on page 7,000 of the database
Wow.
and nobody sees your refresh. Now,
Wow.
understand that one job posting on Indeed gets between 350 and 5,000 applications.
Mm.
Most companies look at the first 100. So if you're 102, nobody sees you.
Mm.
But there are simple tricks. For example,
Mhm.
even though most job postings in North America say, don't call us, we'll call you,
Mm.
call HR and say, my internet just crashed. We had a technical
Oh,
issue with our record
yes.
button, for
Yes, the
example.
record button, yes.
Or my laptop battery just died just as I was
Mm.
pressing submit, or
Mhm.
I didn't get a confirmation, or any variation of that. That can you check that my application went through? The
Mhm.
moment HR checks that the application went through,
Mm.
guess what? You're now first on that list.
Wow.
And now you have 2 minutes to give your elevator pitch of
Yes.
why you are the candidate.
Mhm.
Anything. So, oh, this is
Mhm.
an engineering job. Uh,
Mm.
I built this machine, or I improved this
Mm.
machine by 25%, and I think I'd be great for this job.
Mm.
And since you have HR on the phone, you have an opportunity to ask a question such as, when are you going to start interviewing for this role? So if they say,
Wow.
we're interviewing in a week, go, okay,
Mm.
great. If I don't hear back from you, can I call you back to get some feedback on my resume so that I have a better chance next time? And so if
Wow.
they haven't found
Mhm.
the right people in the first round, when you
Mhm.
call back, they will reconsider you because
Yeah.
of the fact that you actually spoke to them. Right. Now,
Yes.
in terms
Mhm.
of, again, Indeed and your resume. So,
Mhm.
as I mentioned, Indeed refreshes their database between 11:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 2:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Mhm.
So, depending on when you go to bed, and obviously in LA, you got the benefit that 11:45 Eastern Standard Time is about 8:45 p.m. at nighttime. So, at
Mhm.
9 p.m., go into your resume, press spacebar anywhere on your resume,
Mhm.
press save. The moment that you press save, you've made a change to your resume. So Indeed sees it as a new resume.
Ooh.
And so you're in the refresh for
Mhm.
recruiters, for employers, sorry, to
Mm.
actually look at your resume because I get the top 50 of that day
Yes.
for it. Second of all, we've been taught for the past 100 years to fill our resume with action words like managed, directly, coordinated, whatever other words we.
Mhm.
But the reality is that the applicant tracking system does not measure those words. It measures
Wow.
the technical terminology
Mhm.
associated with that, with a job you're applying for. So if you're, for example, an accountant, it measures the word accountant, accounting,
Mhm.
financial statements, balance sheet, income statement,
Mhm.
cash flow,
Yes.
not managed, direct
Mhm.
liaised, coordinated, for example. So
Mhm.
stop filling your words with those like, yes, those action words are necessary,
Mhm.
but give me the story or the proof of the work that you've done within your
Mm.
resume, in a sentence or two, to show me why you are great at something. Because there's a very big difference. I know how to do this to,
Mhm.
by implementing this, uh, let's say AI tool or this technology, I was able to increase efficiency by 22%.
Mm.
Now you also get attention because you have quantifiable. And the last and most important is,
Mm.
the ability to kind of put these keywords throughout your resume over and over again,
Mm.
because
Yes.
not only does, let's say, Indeed score the fact that you have those words, but how close they are to your name and how often
Mm.
they appear. Because if those keywords are on page 2 of your resume, Indeed doesn't score you as a good fit, for example.
Mm.
So I like to do, instead of skills or career history, I call it areas of expertise because it sounds nicer. And I put all the technical words associated with a profession. So if you are, let's say, a data scientist, I say, you know, modeling, simulation, you know, uh, statistics, things like that are associated with data science, right? And I put 40, 60 plus words right at the beginning, because as
Mhm.
soon as the scanners start looking, they go, oh my God, I just found 80 words. I'm excited. And
Yes.
then I do another section called career highlights or
Mhm.
accomplishments or
Mhm.
contribution, whatever you want to call it. And I write my 5 to 7 points of this is what I produced. And
Mhm.
so if an employer spends 5 to 30 seconds reading a resume, if they have the technical skills right off the bat and then they have the career highlights, they don't need to read the resume. So
Mm.
if I say, hey, in my career, for example, I built 2 call centers from scratch.
Mhm.
I will again. I worked for a company that owns 75 private colleges, and they asked me to build a call center with restrictions that my team calls leads that are more than 50 miles from the nearest campus, more than four
Mhm.
months old, with the expectation that my team will generate an extra $300,000 for the year for the company. In
Wow.
less than 6 months, my team did $2.25 million.
Wow.
Right. So here's the thing. Again, you see how that wow, if that's on the resume,
Mhm.
whoever's reading my resume doesn't, if they're trying to hire me as a
Mhm.
sales leader, they don't need to ask
Mhm.
questions
No.
about do I have sales experience. They have a very clear example that now they go, how did you do this? That's the when they call me, they're going to go, how did you do this? And as long as I can explain how I built my team, how I, trained them and so forth, they'll understand why I'm worth having an additional conversation.
Wow.
And the other thing to understand is most HR professionals
Mm.
don't know sales. They
Ah.
know HR. So they
Yes.
know kind of this is what the job description should be, but they don't know what the actual person does on the job.
Mm.
And so when they're taking notes, even if they have their standard, did you say that you're a hardworking, dedicated, committed team player?
Mm.
Check mark list. When I
Yeah.
give them examples and they write the examples and they give it to the appropriate director, VP, whatever higher level of there, that VP reads my example, goes, yep, bring this person in right away, kind of
Mhm.
thing, because they understand and they speak the language.
Mm.
And so there's a level where when you write your resume, the more you can, like, again, I kind of teach people to say, assume that everybody that reads your resume is an idiot or a 6 year old
Mm.
or a six
Okay.
year old. Because
Okay.
if I need to figure out whether or not you know this skill set, then I'm wasting my time with you.
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
as a recruiter, I do this all the time. I just had a client out of Sweden that specializes in regulatory and compliance for the banking industry that needed me to find someone who works in regulatory and compliance in banking that also knows how to do sales, which is a needle in a haystack.
Mm.
I looked at 1,000 LinkedIn profiles. 700 of them wrote their title, VP of Compliance, the years of work, and the name of bank that they worked at. No other information.
Mm.
And I'm like, you work in compliance, which is all about details, and your LinkedIn
Yes.
has zero details. So I eliminated those off the bat.
Mm.
And
Wow.
then of the 300 that remained, I kind of looked at people that weren't at the same bank for 25 years because then their network is very small.
Mhm.
I looked at, were they involved with different types of compliance? Because let's say Wells Fargo just got killed with $350 million in compliance. TD Bank got killed with $150 million in compliance. So these are not small numbers.
No.
And I narrowed it down to about 120 from 1,000. I interviewed 22 people from 120. I sent my client 8. My
Wow.
client said to me, I wish I had the money. I would have hired all 8. That is how well you understood my business. But again,
Wow.
in my first screening, if I'm looking at you because I don't know who is in compliance in the US, and I'm
Yes.
looking at the US and going, you have zero information on your LinkedIn profile, do
Mm.
you really think I'm going to reach out to you? Unless your reputation is that good, or,
Yes.
like I interviewed somebody that programmed Amazon Prime.
Mhm.
The moment he programmed Amazon Prime, every company in North America will offer him $200,000 because, when you're coding in 0.005 of a second, you
Yes.
know, they understand the level of genius kind of for it.
Yes.
But again, unless you're worked for, Meta, Google, Microsoft
Mhm.
at that level, right? Or you went to
Mm.
Harvard, Yale, Stanford, in terms of skill sets,
Mhm.
generally those people never look for a job. They're
Yes.
always kind of recruited or hand-handed. So there's a level where if you're looking for a job, you need to be different than every other fish that's swimming in that direction, kind of thing. You
Yeah.
need to have, Nemo, get a little bit of
Mm.
color on you, get a
Yes.
little bit personality. So even on your resume, add a
Mm.
little bit of
Yes.
color. Change your
Mm.
bullet points from
Mm.
a circle to like a diamond, an arrow, a check mark.
Ah.
Subtle. Add a tiny bit of
Mm.
color to your headings. Change your font from Times New Roman, Arial, Calibri to something that will catch my attention. So, like today, I'm wearing blue, but if you look me up on social media, my favorite color is purple. I go to everything. I went to a networking event that had 50,000 attendees.
Mhm.
I wore a purple shirt. I had a purple bag. I had a purple pen, purple business cards, purple notebook, right?
Mm.
So when I send a follow-up email when 50,000 people are attending a networking event and I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm the guy in purple.
In purple.
They don't need to remember my name. They'll
Mm-mm.
remember the purple,
Mhm.
and then and I also remind them the conversation that we have, because I go out of my way to not have like, "Oh, hi, are you hiring right now?" kind of
Yeah.
conversations
Right.
to
Right.
ensure that the conversation is memorable, which is another strategy in the job search. And again, I, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this, so I can kind of go on and on and on. But
Mm.
these are subtle things, and this is where I'm
Mm.
a resume whisperer versus a career coach, because I
Mm.
want to teach people stop doing mistakes that are harming yourself. Like, let's say I'll use this quick example: interview question. Do you
Mhm.
know how to do this technical skill? If you don't know that technical skill, the automatic response by every single person is no, but I'm a really quick learner. Again, in 20 years of recruiting, I've never met anyone goes, "No, it'll take me 5 years to figure out how to do this."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
right? So here's the thing, the moment that you say no, your interview is done.
Yes.
Right? So
Right.
instead of saying
'Cause they're
no, say,
looking
"You
for
know
that.
what? I've used this software. Here's a result that I produced with it.
Mhm.
And because I produced this result with this software, I'm comfortable to say
Mhm.
that I could do the same with whatever software or
Right.
technology you're asking me to know there." Because again, with the exception of, let's say,
Mhm.
brain surgeon
Mhm.
or someone that works in microarrays and pharmacists, which is super
Mhm.
specialized,
Right.
most technical is transferable. If
Yes.
you know Microsoft
Really.
Word and you're an Apple user and you use the Apple Word
Mhm.
document platform,
Mhm.
the only thing
Right.
that's different is there's a shortcut icon for here and there's a shortcut icon there, but
Mhm.
the functionalities are the same kind of
Yes.
thing. So
Yeah.
stop worrying about, do you have the nuances of it? Like if you're a software developer, the difference between Python, React, Java is this one uses quotations, this one uses brackets, this one uses commas. But
Yes.
if you know how to code and you're a good
Mhm.
coder,
Mhm.
as long as you can highlight how good your coding skills are, that's all that should matter.
Yes. What a great point. I mean, it's the same as sound editing and video editing. A
Mm.
sound file is a sound file. I can follow that. I can find the cuts. I've worked with this for years and years and years. But the programs are a little different. Just have to, kind of learn those. But how many edits have I done with videos? Probably thousands. I mean, I did lots of edits that I've done just for my own use, but I've learned that way. We've all learned that way, and I can do the same but I'm not gonna hire out. I'm not gonna tell you I'm gonna do all your sound editing. No, but I'm gonna teach you that it can be done and teach you enough so you can hire it out. That's
Right.
what I do.
Or you use some of the AI technologies that exist today to
Exactly.
there where you learn it once,
Yes.
you follow the processes, you make a few mistakes the first time, but
Right.
then you were like, okay, this is kind of the routine
This is
or
what I
the
want.
level that
Yes.
I need. And then
Mhm.
now
Yes.
do the settings and everything
Mhm.
else is automatic.
Yes.
Uh,
And the AI programs will learn your preferences, but you have to tell them your preferences. Very
Correct.
important when you're on different platforms. But that's part of our learning process, each
Yeah.
person too. Yes. Wow. Well, we've covered so much. I want you to share. You have a story, I'm sure, and then I want you to give us one takeaway here because I want people that have listened to this, they're like, whoa, that's so much information. It's just so wonderful. So I'm going to want you to give a takeaway. But what is like a little bit of an interview story that you can share that really, really made a difference in negotiation with the right type of resume? Can you share something that's very,
uh,
very
do you want the good or do you want the bad or do you want both?
well? Give us one that had a positive outcome.
So, one of my craziest negotiation, I had a individual that was a financial controller for a company that does blank CDs and DVDs. This is going back about 15 years, and
Mhm,
he was making $65,000 base and $20,000 bonus. For
mhm,
5 years, his employer told him that they cannot give him a raise because the company is not making enough money. Now, he came and interviewed with me, and I sent him to a client of mine that does custom surround signs for like high end customized house. We're talking 15 years ago. So houses that were $2 million plus, where, everything's in the wall, everything's on a
mhm.
tablet. I mean, it's standard today, but back
Yes.
then, this was brand new technology kind of thing.
Right.
And, anyways, my
Mm,
client loved him. So asked me,
mm,
how much is he making? I said, 65 and 20. He goes, fine. I'll give him a base of $85,000, $25,000 bonus to come work for me.
hmm,
Told the candidate that good news, candidate resigned. Within 35 minutes, his boss came into the office, was like, I'm not letting you quit. You're too important for the
mhm,
company. What'd they offer you? So my client told him, or
mhm.
my candidate told him, 85 and 25. He's like, okay, let me crunch some numbers. He came back within a half hour, said, okay, we'll give you a base of $120,000, $30,000 bonus to stay here.
Wow.
Okay. Candidate calls me. He's like, listen, I've worked here for 10 years. I know everybody. I know the routine. They just doubled my salary. You know, called my client, told him what happened. My client's like, there's something really special about this guy. What'd they offer him? And I told him, and he said, okay, fine. I'll give him a base of $160,000, $40,000 bonus to come work for me.
Mm,
Called the candidate, told him the news. Candidate resigned again.
mm.
Within 45 minutes, the entire leadership staff came into his
Mhm,
office and was like, you're the only one that understands the numbers here. You're way too important to this company. What'd they offer you? He told them.
mm,
They're like, okay, let us discuss. They came back 45 minutes later and said, we'll give you a base of $200,000, 2% ownership in the company. You'll make about 250 a year. Again, I'm trying to remind the candidate, like, you've worked there for 10 years. For 5 years, they haven't given you a raise. Do you think they're going to
Yeah.
treat you better or worse now that you're going to make more money? Right? He's like,
Mhm,
yeah, but this is like triple my salary. This is
mhm.
called my client, told him what happened. My client's like, you know what? There's something really unique about this guy. I'm going to make him my right hand man. I'm going to
Mhm.
offer him a base of $265,000 and 9% ownership in my company. In his worst year, he'll clear over $500,000. If he doesn't take this, he's an idiot. He hasn't even worked here, and I'm offering him a $500,000. The candidate quit and was like, I'm not taking any counter offers because he understood. And I played a lot of like, this guy's come back 3 times. This guy
Yeah.
is like, you haven't worked a day and this is how much he wants you. Think about
Yes.
that. Right.
Mhm.
Anyways, that negotiation took 4.5 hours,
Wow.
probably the most stressful negotiation of my life, more stressful than proposing to my wife.
Oh my.
Right. So,
Oh, wow. What a great story though. And it shows just how our work can and the sort of effect that, a negotiation and having somebody like you that will negotiate.
but it's also when you presented the right values because,
Right.
Deborah, as a coach, it's one thing to
Mhm.
say I coach or help people at their next stage of life in terms
Right.
of level up. But if you go,
Right.
you know what, I've helped create this many
Right.
millionaires, or I helped create,
Right.
people that, let's say, wanted better jobs, and
Mhm.
through some of the, mindset coaching that you've done or anything like that, you've helped them get there. That is
Right.
what counts. It's like, yes, if you have education, it's great. If you have there, but again, I'm in this world as well where, I charge $400 for a resume and
Mhm.
someone says to me, wow, that's expensive. Other people charge 100. When somebody says this to me, my reaction is go hire them
Yes.
because like there's a
Mhm.
difference between someone who's written 25 resumes or 50 resumes and
Yes.
someone that's written 12,000. There's a difference
Definitely.
between someone who studied HR and knows HR little box
Uh-huh.
versus someone that says, here's how you are different and here's how you
Yeah.
present yourself
Mm.
different, better, or other, because that's what the world today needs, given
Uh,
again the wild, wild
yeah.
west of
Mhm.
technology that's happening right now in its infancy
Yes.
of AI kind of thing.
That's huge right now. Huge is that distinctness, being able to set ourselves apart. So I want you to give the information. How do people contact you, first of all? And because all of that will be in the show notes, by the way. I hope you live your next chapter, and you should have the best years ahead, just the absolute best. And so I try to line up guests for that. I try to speak with that. But I want people to have your information because you have such a value. You've got books out. I mean, 11 books, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, but what's one takeaway if someone says, okay, I need to do something like today or tomorrow? What do I do like right now? What should I
Stop
evaluate?
being passive.
Oh,
Be proactive, meaning like
okay.
quick example. I had a friend that graduated mechanical engineer. Ironically enough, to get an entry level job in mechanical engineering, he needed 5 years of experience.
Mm,
So he sent out hundreds of resumes to get no response. He
mhm.
picked 20 companies he wants to work for. Showed up to printed his resume, went to the first one, showed up at 9 a.m., said, I'd like to speak to the director. They looked at him and said, do you have an appointment? He said, no. They
Wow.
said, well, he's busy. He said, fine, I'll wait. And he waited there until 2:30 in the afternoon.
Mm,
At 2:30 in the afternoon, the director finally came out and said, I understand you've been waiting for me all day. How can I help you?
wow.
And my friend said, listen, I know you don't have any job postings on your website right now,
Mm,
but I researched your company. I love that you're doing these things in mechanical engineering. This is the
mhm,
projects I did in university. I want to work here. Within 10-minute conversation of him just kind of presenting himself, he was
mhm.
offered full-time employment at
Wow.
reception while having a conversation that he waited there. And the director said, the fact that you were willing to wait there
Mm,
is why I'm hiring you. If you've
wow.
ever read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon
Yes.
Hill, right? And
Hmm.
every successful entrepreneur has,
Yes.
there's a story about an old lady that kind of comes into a large retail giant and one of the I forget the name, but the clerks that's
Mhm,
putting the merchandise on the shelf
mhm.
walks over and goes, are you okay? And she said, it's cold outside. It's raining. I just wanted to get out of the rain.
Mhm, mhm,
And he says, can I help you with anything? And she's like, no, I just want to kind of get out of the rain.
mhm,
And he was like, okay. And he went and he grabbed her a chair and said, if you're going to wait here, at least be comfortable, sit down
mhm,
comfortably. And about a month and a half later, she thanked them. She asked the kid's name, and that was that.
mhm,
A month and a half later, she called the store and said, I want to furnish my castle in Scotland,
mhm, mhm.
and I want this kid to get the sale. And
What?
the store was like, but he's a clerk. He's not even a salesperson in the store. And she's like, are you really willing to give up
This
decorating
gold.
my castle and argue with me? And they were like, no, 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 no. And so they kind of trained the kid and whatever quickly. And that sale became so big that he became the VP of that company. Now, the old lady was Andrew Carnegie's mother
Oh my gosh.
of US Steel,
Oh my god,
right?
what a great story.
Now, and again, I'm going to tie it into more recent. So, one of my friends and early mentors, his name is Barry Spelchuk.
Mm,
He wrote A Cup of Chicken Soup for the Soul, the mini one that put it in your pocket
okay.
that sold
Yes.
600,000 copies worldwide. And he
Mhm,
shared a story with me where there was a security guard in Northern Ontario, Canada, that would come into work 15, 20 minutes early. He was always smiling. He was always
mhm,
energetic. You
mhm,
know, as he walked through the mall, if he saw garbage on the floor, he would pick it up. Um, when customers had a lot of shopping, he would help them carry the shopping to their car. When the stores had new merchandise,
mm,
he would help the store employees kind of with all the boxes into the
mm,
store. Now, the owners would see this from the fourth floor. So they called him and said, why do you do this? And
mm,
he said, I'm here for 8 hours a day. I can choose to be miserable. I could choose to be happy. I choose to be
mhm,
happy. I don't want to see garbage in my house. I don't want to
mm,
see it where I work. They were so impressed with his attitude that they paid for his entire education, including his MBA, so that he can come back and manage the entire mall. Now, I'm sharing this story because we've become creatures of laziness, where we're
Yes.
like, oh, we have Indeed. I've sent out thousands of resumes. No, stop.
Mm.
Go be proactive. Go in person to there. Call
Mm.
companies that say, don't call us, right?
Yes.
And again, you have resources like podcasts. Say that
Yes.
you want to interview leaders and find out their genius and learn about them, and then use that as leverage to say, I want to work for you. I want to learn from you. I want to be
Mm.
there. Network. Stop, like, okay, don't go to networking events with your friends. Go to networking events with decision makers. Have conversations that are different, that are
Yeah.
memorable.
Mhm.
Brand yourself, color, like, whether it's a hat, whether it's a scarf, whether it's a tie, whether it's
Mhm.
earrings, whether it's glasses that are unique, shoes that are there. I don't
Mhm.
care what it is, but brand yourself so that
Mhm.
people remember you and start associating
Mm.
with you at a
Yeah.
level of, and don't be like, yeah, I'm hardworking and dedicated. Give me the results. Talk about impact. Talk about, accomplishments. Talk about there, because again, uh,
Mm.
I leverage the fact that, I've invested 30,000 hours to be a master as a resume whisperer. I've
Mhm.
helped 12,000 plus people. I've this because
Mhm.
people don't care about that until they understand how much value I'm giving them. And
Yes.
so I'm not spending like me, but I'm going, here's what you need to know.
Mhm.
I'm on this podcast to share this, not because
Mhm.
I need to tell you that this is the right way, but because
Mhm.
I'm tired of people saying, I cannot find a job. There's no jobs in North America. I'm like, no, we have not declared bankruptcy in the world
Yes.
yet. Right. And the moment that you start
Mhm.
doing even the smallest little things
Mhm.
to be noticed,
Mhm.
people will come to
Mm.
you.
Yes.
Right? And you asked me earlier how to contact me,
Yes.
Josef Stetter. If you don't know, think of the word stutter, but instead of a U, an E. That's kind of my last name. I'm
Mm.
very active, especially on LinkedIn,
Mm.
Facebook,
Mm.
Instagram. But again, understand that because I work with white collar professionals, I'm
Mhm.
predominantly on LinkedIn in terms of engagement and
Right.
instant conversation.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, stop. Just like, oh, I sent out 100 resumes. I'm going to sit here and wait and wonder why no one's calling me. Because
Right.
again, you might be stuck in a vicious cycle where your resume is not passing the AI scanners. You might be stuck in a
Yes.
vicious cycle where your resume is so generic and bland that there's no reason for me to call you
Yeah.
because I don't know why you. Just
Yes.
because you had a job for
Mhm.
15 years doesn't
Mhm.
mean you're great at it.
No. No.
And start owning, here's the things that I've done, big or small,
Mhm.
because you might go, you know what, I reorganized the filing system here in 3 days and it was over 10,000 files, and you might, yeah, whatever, it's part of my job. But that could be the most important thing to the company that's trying to find the right fit person. uh you know
Mm.
and yeah, I'd say that the biggest thing right now is we're lazy. We're not actually proactive. We're not going to
Mhm.
networking. We're not going to employment agencies. We're not
Mhm.
going to,
Mm.
we're not proactive on LinkedIn. We're not,
Mm.
if your LinkedIn is just your name and where you've worked and there's no
Mhm.
information, again, I don't know you.
Mm.
I've never met you. My
Mhm.
decision is going to be based on what I see on your social media,
Right.
predominantly LinkedIn,
Right.
right?
Right.
So if you haven't bothered, I'm not
Mhm.
going to bother to call you. And then you wonder why it's so hard.
Right. Right. I love that. Actually, very, very proactive, a hard worker. You have given, I know, if people have hung all the way through this, you've given a lot of people a lot of hope today. And that's for your best years ahead. There's a lot of hope, there's a lot of opportunity. What drives me is people are sitting on their skills, they're sitting on their experience, they're sitting on all of the resources they have. They're just sitting. They're
Mhm.
stuck. So, understanding some of these principles are just very, very important. Even if you're introvert, if you whatever, but that's great. I hope people contact you. And thank you all for joining us today. And thank you, Joseph. You have hung through with more hours here than I asked at the beginning with our podcast interview because we had some technical things happening. But it's
Thank
been
you for giving me the
uh,
opportunity, Deborah.
It was just a wonderful, wonderful time. I've learned some things today. Hopefully people have that have clicked in. Make sure you just click in with all of the links that I provide. If there's an article, make sure you grab that and that you connect with us with our newsletter as well. So thank you all for joining us, and I'll look forward to seeing all of you again then next time. Bye-bye for now. Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.